Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a deep dive into the tinderbox that is our current geopolitical situation. Tensions are high, alliances are strained, and the echoes of war drums seem to be getting louder. The question on everyone's mind: are we hurtling towards another world war? From the ongoing war in Ukraine to simmering conflicts in the Middle East and Asia, flashpoints are erupting across the globe. Let's unpack these critical standoffs, analyze the risks of escalation, and explore the potential consequences for a fragile world order. First, let us analyze Russia versus Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has shattered the fragile peace in Europe, igniting a conflict steeped in historical grievances, competing geopolitical ambitions, and a dangerous military escalation. To understand the potential for this war to spiral out of control, we must delve into the historical context that fueled the flames, analyze the military strategies employed by both sides, and assess the chilling possibility of major powers getting dragged into a wider confrontation. The roots of the current conflict lie deep in the complex history of the region. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine emerged as an independent state. However, its historical ties to Russia, particularly during the era of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, created a complex relationship. While Ukraine sought to forge its own path, aligning itself more closely with the West, Russia viewed this move with suspicion, fearing a loss of influence and a potential security threat on its borders. This tension simmered for decades, fueled by NATO's eastward expansion, which Russia perceived as an encirclement strategy. The immediate trigger for the current war came in 2014, when a pro-Russian Ukrainian president was ousted by a popular uprising. Russia responded by annexing Crimea, a Ukrainian peninsula with a majority ethnic Russian population, and backing separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. This ignited a low-level war that claimed thousands of lives in the Donbass region. Despite a shaky ceasefire agreement in 2015, tensions continued to rise. In the lead-up to the full-scale invasion in February 2022, Russia amassed a massive force of troops on Ukraine's borders. Despite repeated warnings from the West, Russia launched a military operation aimed at regime change and the subjugation of Ukraine. The initial Russian strategy appeared to be a swift and decisive victory, with a focus on capturing major Ukrainian cities, including Kiev, the capital. However, the Ukrainian military, bolstered by Western military aid and fueled by a fierce sense of nationalism, put up a staunch resistance. The blitzkrieg tactics faltered, and the war became a bloody slog. Russia's military strategy has been marred by logistical shortcomings, poor morale among some troops, and an underestimation of Ukrainian resolve. Their initial focus on seizing airfields and decapitating the Ukrainian leadership failed. The fighting has devolved into a brutal war of attrition, with heavy shelling of Ukrainian cities causing immense civilian casualties. Russia has shifted its focus to the eastern Donbass region, where it has more experience fighting separatist forces. However, progress has been slow and costly. The Ukrainian military strategy has been one of fierce resistance, leveraging its knowledge of the terrain and the high morale of its troops. They have adopted guerrilla tactics, inflicting heavy losses on Russian armored columns and utilizing anti-tank weaponry supplied by the West to great effect. This unexpected resistance has not only thwarted Russia's initial plans but also embarrassed them on the world stage. The potential for this conflict to spiral out of control is a terrifying prospect. The presence of thousands of Russian troops armed with conventional weapons, including long-range missiles, creates a constant risk of escalation. The war has already pushed NATO to bolster its forces in Eastern Europe, raising the specter of a direct confrontation between Russia and the alliance. Furthermore, the use of chemical or biological weapons by a desperate Russia cannot be entirely ruled out. Additionally, the war has disrupted global food and energy supplies, raising the specter of famine and economic collapse in vulnerable regions. The longer the war drags on, the higher the chances of a wider conflict erupting, potentially escalating into a devastating war between nuclear powers. The international community has responded to the war with a wave of sanctions against Russia, crippling its economy and isolating it on the world stage. Diplomatic efforts to end the conflict have so far yielded little progress. The future of Ukraine hangs in the balance, and the potential consequences for global security are dire. This war is not just a European conflict, it has global ramifications. It highlights the fragility of the international order and the dangers of unchecked nationalism. The human cost of the war is staggering, with thousands of lives lost, millions displaced, and Ukrainian cities reduced to rubble. Ultimately, a negotiated settlement that respects Ukrainian sovereignty and addresses Russia's security concerns seems like the only way out of this devastating conflict. The world watches with bated breath, hoping for a peaceful resolution before this tinderbox explodes into a wider conflagration. Let us analyze the situation in Middle East. The Middle East, a region of profound historical significance and rich cultural heritage, has unfortunately become synonymous with conflict and turmoil. At the heart of these tensions lies the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which dates back to the mid-20th century with the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. The ensuing displacement of Palestinians and the Arab-Israeli wars of 1948, 1967, and 1973 have left deep scars and fueled a cycle of violence and mistrust between the two sides. Despite intermittent efforts at peace, including the Oslo Accords of the 1990s and subsequent negotiations, a comprehensive resolution remains elusive, perpetuating a state of perpetual conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is emblematic of the broader struggle for power and control in the region. Military strategies employed by various actors in the region further contribute to the volatility. Israel, equipped with one of the most formidable military arsenals in the world, has pursued a strategy of deterrence, employing a combination of superior firepower, intelligence capabilities, and targeted operations to maintain its security and assert its dominance. On the other hand, Palestinian groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad have relied on asymmetric tactics, including guerrilla warfare, rocket attacks, and terrorism, to challenge Israeli authority and garner international attention. However, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is just one layer of the complex geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Proxy wars further exacerbate the region's instability. Iran is supplying Hezbollah with advanced weaponry and funding Hamas's activities in Gaza, effectively turning these groups into proxies in its broader confrontation with Israel. Similarly, the sectarian bloodshed in Syria to the geopolitical maneuvering in Yemen and Libya, external actors, including USA, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Russia, have become embroiled in a complex web of alliances and interventions, further fueling the flames of conflict. Amidst this backdrop of entrenched conflict, the specter of Iran's nuclear ambitions looms large, adding another layer of complexity to the region's geopolitical dynamics. The prospect of Iran attaining nuclear weapons capability has raised alarm bells among neighboring states and global powers, igniting fears of a potential arms race and destabilizing the delicate balance of power. Moreover, the specter of Iran's nuclear program adds a dangerous dimension to the region's dynamics, with the possibility of a military strike by Israel or the United States risking a wider conflagration. The intricate web of alliances and rivalries among Middle Eastern states, coupled with external interventions by global powers, further complicates the prospect of a peaceful resolution. Any miscalculation or escalation in one theater of conflict could have far-reaching consequences, drawing in other major powers and potentially sparking a broader regional war. In conclusion, the Middle East remains a powder keg of conflict, shaped by centuries of historical animosities, contemporary military strategies, and geopolitical rivalries. The Israeli-Palestinian stalemate, Iran's nuclear ambitions, and the proliferation of proxy wars pose a constant threat of escalation, with the potential to draw in other major powers and plunge the region into chaos. Only through concerted diplomatic efforts, dialogue, and a commitment to addressing underlying grievances can the cycle of violence be broken and a path towards lasting peace and stability be forged. Let us analyze the situation in Asia. From the crystal-clear waters of the South China Sea to the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas, Asia simmers with a complex web of territorial disputes. China's assertive territorial claims in the South China Sea, the Taiwan question, and simmering border tensions between India and Pakistan all have the potential to erupt into violence. We'll analyze the historical grievances, the economic factors at play, and the delicate balance of power in this critical region. China's assertive claims in the South China Sea are perhaps the most well-known territorial dispute. Dotted with resource-rich islands and strategically vital shipping lanes, this maritime region has become a focal point of national interests. China claims sovereignty over almost the entire South China Sea, using a controversial nine-line demarcation that overlaps with the territorial claims of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. These countries, along with the United States, which maintains a strong naval presence in the region, vehemently oppose China's claims. The specter of conflict looms large. China has deployed its Coast Guard and military vessels aggressively, harassing fishing boats and intimidating smaller nations. Island-building projects and military installations on disputed territories further heighten tensions. Freedom of navigation operations by the U.S. Navy challenge China's territorial claims, raising the stakes in a game of brinkmanship. Adding fuel to the fire is the question of Taiwan. A self-governing island with its own democratically elected government, Taiwan is viewed by China as a renegade province that must be reunified with the mainland, even by force if necessary. The One China policy, a cornerstone of Chinese foreign policy, demands international recognition of this stance. The United States, on the other hand, has a long-standing commitment to Taiwan's defense, further complicating the issue. This creates a precarious situation where any move by China towards forcible unification of Taiwan would likely trigger a major U.S. response, potentially drawing other regional powers into the fray. Moving north to the Himalayas, we find another hotspot, the border dispute between India and China, the world's two most populous nations. The two Asian giants have a long history of border skirmishes, with a brutal war erupting in 1962. The line of actual control, LAC, a poorly demarcated border, the majority of which lies above an altitude of 4,000 meters above sea level, separating the two countries, remains a source of friction. This disagreement stretches back centuries, with poorly defined borders a legacy of colonial times. The issue flared up in 2020 when a deadly clash between Indian and Chinese soldiers with sticks and stones high in the Himalayas raised fears of a full-blown war. Both nations possess nuclear weapons, making any military escalation a terrifying prospect. Adding another layer of complexity is India's tense relationship with Pakistan. This creates a tangled web of alliances and potential conflicts, where a dispute between two nations can quickly draw in others. The balance of power in Asia is another critical element. The rise of China as a military and economic powerhouse has shifted the regional dynamic. Countries like Vietnam and the Philippines feel increasingly squeezed, caught between China's assertiveness and the U.S.'s commitment to regional security. India, with its own aspirations to be a major power, seeks to balance China's influence. This multipolarity, with multiple powerful actors vying for influence, creates a complex strategic landscape where miscalculations could have devastating consequences. The potential consequences of a misstep are dire. A military confrontation in the South China Sea could cripple global trade. A war between India and China could destabilize the entire world. The specter of nuclear weapons being used, even accidentally, is too horrifying to contemplate.